You could have heard this episode 1 week early on our Patreon, patreon.com/IndieHeadsPodcast. For joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll see episodes early and gain access to our Discord server. All of our upcoming episodes will be put on our Patreon 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. But if you're hearing this through our Patreon feed, we thank you so much for your support. We especially want to thank our Real Ones patrons, including Becca Etienne, Georgia Mikowski, James Bost, Holiday Kirk, Tyler, Marcy Anime, Chance Holdup, Delaney Miller, Rana Cruz, Josiah Duncan, Jenna LaFleur, Matt Cameron, Grant in the Back of My Dragula, Pablo Escobar's Hippos, Jackson Christ, Alec Felder, Matthew Taylor, Breen Hare, Drew Wharton, I Like Books, Jonathan David, Max Kapazinski, Mark Berry, Darian Fisher, Cal 50, Noah's Refused, Pimp Dudley Matthews Event, Chris Wade, Jack Onkataga, Midwest Maxwell, Kevin John, Jake Wald, Eraser Red Baby, Rob Marino, Max, Dylan, Sandy Nemo, Waffle113, Gavin 490 Freak, and Maze Farms. To become a real one, consider supporting us for $5 a month on Patreon, or you'll receive a bonus episode every month and get a shout out at the top of the pod. Anyways, though, enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to FYC. For your consideration, the new music series from your friends here at the Indie Heads podcast. And on this week's episode, I'm here with my good pals Zach and Ian to talk the new Bill Callahan record. Actually, hang on. Well, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say the album name. I'm just gonna reverse it in post. Okay, the new Bill Callahan album. Make sure I give myself some good solid space to get that in. And by we're going to talk about it, I'm not going to say a word because I don't know. I got nothing to say about this record. It's good.
Matty is ill-prepared for his own podcast. Matty's ill-prepared for his own podcast.
Look, I'm on this episode purely as a producer and the person that gives the intros only. So this is an episode that we briefly discussed on the grocery store core episode.
That's right.
About doing, and hey, here we are, we're doing it. Sorry, this is a week late. Unfortunately, Zach had the flu last week, so we could not get this in. And also, I'll just say off jump, this is probably gonna be the last episode of FYC for the rest of the year because we are getting our end of the year coverage started pretty soon, and also we'll have some best new pod bonus episodes coming out throughout the next few weeks after this. So FYC on hold until probably sometime in January, probably is when we'll get those started back up again. But for this first little season, or this first part of the series, I think we're ending on a pretty good record with two very good people. So Ian and Zach, I'm gonna let y'all cook. Ping me when you need me. I'm gonna eat some fine Pizza Hut pizza and drink my delicious Pepsi while y'all cook for this episode.
God, I wish that were me. Can we trade places? Nah, I'm bluffing. I'm the host.
You would be in Los Angeles, California, and I don't think you'd like it here.
No.
There you go.
No. So, Newark, New Jersey.
Yes,
but
like Matty said, this episode was supposed to come out last week, but much like Bill Callahan, I felt something coming on. It was a disease, unfortunately. So here we are now. We much regret the error.
If Zach coughs during the episode, it's not the flu. We actually hit some sativa right before. Fuck! I was trying to do a bit, but it's too funny. I can't stop thinking about the fucking sativa tweet.
God, I miss Bill's Twitter.
I miss Bill's. Well, Twitter's dead, so we're never gonna get it back. But. Every time we hit sativa, we get creative, and we're about to cook and talk about the new Bill Callahan record. So I think my first thought on it, I literally just gave it a re-listen right before this, and the one thought that keeps coming back to me, and I kind of don't want it to keep coming back to me because I don't like to compare one thing to another sometimes, but I've said this before, but I think this might be his best record in at least a decade. And by extension, I think a part of that has to do with the fact that I feel like this record is sort of like not really like a return to form, but like it sounds very distinctly it sounds like a lot of his records sort of like compiled into one piece, but I think for the most part it kind of resembles Apocalypse the most. And maybe this is my bias towards Apocalypse, like no offense to Dream River, because Dream River is great. And I feel like we also have to talk about the fact that late era Bill Callahan is like heavily slept on as well, because I'm no shade to any of those records either, except for maybe Blind Date Party. um but Apocalypse was like such a standout in his discography, and he didn't really have a standout like since then, really. Like Dream River like almost made it there, but like it's not Apocalypse, and I feel like nobody was expecting Bill to pull this out of him like so late in his career. Like this totally, I wasn't expecting it to be this good. Like shit.
Honestly, I feel like not quite the opposite of you because, like, I am an Apocalypse respecter. I love Dream River, but I mentioned this when we were discussing potentially recording last week. I feel like this might be his best post-smog run, like from Shepherd to now.
Yeah.
Not just because of like the prolificacy that he's suddenly found. This is his fourth record in 3-4 years now. Is that right?
Yeah, he's put well, okay. Let me think about this, because he did I don't want to count Blind Date Party. It's not that I hate that record. I just hate the fact that they like him and that's my two faves. That's Bonnie Prince Billy and Bill Callahan. Both of my boys. But it was so stupid because they were marketing the record, but it was all singles that they had already released, but they were marketing it to death. And it's like, guys, if you're gonna like market that, I get it, you need to survive and like make money, but like give me another give me another like track or two or something. But um yeah, I don't know if we want to count Blind Date Party, but Gold Record was like 2020, I think.
Yes, like less than a
Yeah,
year after Shepherd, I think.
right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So like you're looking at 3-4 records. Um yeah, which is kind of, I don't think we've seen that sort of productivity from him since like early Smog.
Since Smog, yeah.
Yeah.
And it
And I
also,
feel
like,
like, oh, yeah, continue because I've been talking a lot.
I wanted to, like, this is something I was thinking about with Gold Record recently because I revisited Gold Record not too long ago. And, like, much in the same way that Gold Record didn't feel like, hey, here's some bonuses from Shepherd, I'm just going to put them out now. Like,
Mhm,
they had a purpose to them, I think, especially
mhm.
when you think about how he revisited Let's Move to the Country. I think that there was like, he's not just putting out songs just to put out songs.
Mhm.
And like, after being away for almost a decade after he put out Dream River in 2013, like to first do a double album, then like 10 more songs a year later, and now another 12.
Mhm.
It's like, I feel like it's just constant refinement and a
Yeah.
sharpening of the sword. And I don't think this is his best of that run, but it's very, very close in my book.
Yeah, I think I would call it I don't, I would definitely call it my favorite from this like sort of recent like late era run of albums. I'm I'm not really entirely sure what I would put in second place though. It's definitely torn between Shepherd and Gold Record, because I honestly love Gold Record. I think it's a really neat collection of songs, and yeah, I like your point about the sort of refinement. Um and I'm gonna piggyback off of that. Another thing that's been going through my head, we talk about like how prolific he's been all of a sudden, and dissecting sort of the lyrics that are on this new record. Notice how I'm avoiding saying the album title too. Like, I'm not going to call it YTI. I know it's called something else, but I don't feel like pronouncing it backwards. And I don't want to bother Matty with editing it in post. But
No, I'll do it in post. I have to edit this right after this we get done recording. So I'll just say Eli. Anytime you guys say Eli, I will reverse it in post.
We love you,
All
Matty.
right. Of course.
Thanks, Matty. So YTI, what was that? Oh, yeah, I know what I was saying. But I was listening to it just before this and like sort of looking at the lyrical content a little bit more, and I don't know, do I want to bring this thought like this early on into the discussion? A lot of my favorite records recently, I feel like, have all been these like sort of late career standouts by a lot of artists who have been established for a really, really long time, just putting out this like stellar thing, maybe not out of nowhere, but you can tell that they've sort of been building up to that. And the two other records that I think about when I also think about reality, in relation to that, are the new Lamb Chop record, The Bible, which I can't not mention that. Like, it's not a podcast episode if I don't bring up Lamb Chop, The Bible. That's another one for your consideration. And Hey What by Low. I feel like all three of those records sort of, it's like, it kind of feels like the artists sort of, well, I think now more than ever, the point I'm trying to get at is like now more than ever, there's like sort of this feeling of like impending dread and doom, that, maybe obviously people have felt this before, but I think it's sort of unprecedented now. And here you have these artists who have been making music for 20, 30 years and sort of, still relevant, but also like still trying to hang on because the landscape has just totally changed, since they were starting their career. And, sort of having to come up with ways on the fly, like not only to like continue to innovate, but also to sort of address this, sort of elephant in the room that like, the world could end like any minute now almost. And yeah, I don't know. It feels like end times are coming closer than ever. And, um, it generates anxiety for a lot of us, but I feel like especially for somebody who is aging and has seen as much as, some of the artists that I just mentioned, it's got to be even more so. So I wonder if that's also sort of because I've seen a lot of inward reflection on the last couple of Bill Callahan records. And I feel like all of that inward reflection has sort of culminated into what he sings about on Reality. And I wonder if he's still putting like a lot of thought and meaning into all of his songwriting, but also I wonder if this is all just sort of a response to that sort of internal turmoil and questioning and worry and whatnot.
Yeah, Coyotes, it feels pretty explicitly about that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I was also the one that really stuck out to me when I was re-listening, and it's not even necessarily like my favorite track on the album or anything, but Lily has a lot of I mean, starting off with that lyric about like, oh, I already wrote your death song, like that just kind of hits.
Yeah, like one of the things that I was getting at when I mentioned this is like continuous refinement, it feels like a relative to like a song like Circles from Shepherd in a Sheepskin Vest.
Mm-hmm.
Because like both are quite explicitly about death in the family, possibly I think the death of his mother.
Yeah. I've listened to interviews.
And the idea
of
like the idea of like this never-ending cycle, and the idea of like I need to pull up the exact lyric, but the one that stuck me cold was like when I was first heard this song. The medium said you were sticking around halfway to make sure my boy was okay. Family has obviously become a very important theme of Bill's music in recent years, but that one, really
Yeah.
got me when I first heard it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot of brutal lyrics, and yet he's got some fucking funny ones too. He's
Yeah,
just like me for real. In the face of all of this, he knows how to make a good damn joke. He knows how to laugh at shit. And I respect the hell out of that, because
Yeah,
you know
like,
what, same buddy.
there isn't a song on this album like Protest Song or Raicooter that's just like explicitly jokey joke songs, but he's still
Right.
got some good ones.
Oh, he's got some bars. Like I I need to pull up the lyric and read it verbatim.
It's Naked Souls, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, you know what I'm pulling up.
Yes!
And I will say for the record that I think this is the one for me on this record. Not just because of the lyric. You know the lyric, but
But it's not because of the lyric either.
You got me there. No, but it's really like I love the way that Naked Souls just sort of bit like it almost shifts. So it's not like a tempo change, but also the song like totally transforms itself by like the
It
halfway
erupts,
mark.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, he though actually the lyric before that is really good too. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but okay. You can't hide what's inside. Maybe he'll buy you another gun, or maybe he'll become a policeman or kill one. Bill Callahan said a cab. But the lyric, you escaped what I escaped. You'd be stress eating in a diner in Dallas too. The man did a bad word in Paris reference for no reason.
And he's wearing sunglasses that say F you on them.
Yeah, he's wearing shades that say F you. So he can't see yours, and you can't see his naked souls, plural. He has multiple naked souls.
Inside of him there are two coyotes.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I'm trying to, what are some other highlight? I like the intro of Boll Weevil too. Where he just says that a boll weevil is a little bug, in case you didn't know that. Oh,
yes!
Thank you. I needed that. Everybody listen. Wait for it.
I am listening, of course.
Thank you, Matty.
A boll weevil is a little bug.
So true. So true.
They say it comes from Texas.
That's true too.
But everybody knows skin is just dust.
I don't know if I knew that necessarily, but I'll take his word for it.
First time I saw him.
Oh, these fucking drums,
Sitting
man.
on the square.
Yeah. See, this track is another standout for me, and going back to me saying like this reminds me of Apocalypse, I think in particular like
He had his family there.
the first run of tracks really do kind of mirror the first run of tracks on Apocalypse, but like in particular this being the third track and then America being the third track on Apocalypse. Like you start off with these like, you know, these really like stand out, like punchy, anthematic, you know, folk. I don't want to call it folk rock. It's not folk rock, but you know what I mean. Like these, like,
Oh yeah.
you know, like they're like real standouts. And then just going into this like jaunty, sort of funky, not funky. It's also not funky. I'm just using words.
It's a white boy Wiggler.
My emotions, yeah. But it's got a very similar structure to America, with the and it's that like the terseness of like all of his lines too. Like he just says the handful of I don't know, man.
Any Bill Callahan song is like half a step away from being spoken word, but this one, like, especially if you compare it to America, like, these are spoken word ass songs. He's killing them.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. But yeah. So I'll stop comparing it to Apocalypse now.
I never really thought about that comparison, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that was honestly one of the other, like, not only did it remind me of Apocalypse because, you know, maybe I hyped this new record up like so much and I was like, holy shit, this is so good. And also like Apocalypse is like that album for me. Actually no, that's a lie. I think Eagle is that album for me if we're talking about his solo stuff or the stuff under his own name. But you know, like Apocalypse is like still an important record to me. And like if we're talking about his past decade, like obviously that's my favorite thing he's released this past decade. So this comes out and I'm like, wow, this is the new this is the new Apocalypse. But I did notice some similar song structures and all, but there are a lot of comparisons that you can draw really from his whole body of work, going back to the point that I brought up about, you know, all of these albums like that artists are putting out as like not really necessarily final statements, but like, you know, just packaging this all up there, like, you know, just in case this is the last one, just in case like everything explodes or whatever. Here's like a culmination of my work. Going back to that sort of, and back to the new Lamb Chop record, because I can't not talk about it, but that is another one too that there might be one or two records that it sounds the most similar to, but there are sneaky little elements throughout the whole thing that you can pick out and be like, oh, this part of this track sounds like it's from Nixon. This part of this track sounds like it's from Flotus. You can kind of do the same thing with this album too, because there are a lot of moments that remind me of like Woke on a Whale Heart, where he just does like a lot more like goof. He's still sort of in that smog phase where he's like a little bit experimental, but he's trying to be a little more like earnest and sincere in his songwriting.
Yeah, like this, I don't really want to say a culmination because like he's been coming out with a lot lately, but this does feel like in a lot of ways the culmination of his Bill Callahan era.
Yeah,
like you got me thinking about similarities. Like First Bird reminds me a lot of The Sing from Dream River, which is probably my favorite Bill Callahan song.
Interesting.
Like they just feel very similar. They feel very similarly pitched. Like, yeah. Now, obviously, The Sing is a little more funnier. Like, you have to be if you're talking about the only words I've said today are beer and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't just a funny statement. That's also kind of a sad one. And I think there's something similar going on with First Bird because, like, I suppose, well, obviously, you're coming out of dreams. That's the first line. There's that. Maybe that's what made me make the connection.
Yeah, like the repetition. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe this is just my interpretation on it. It feels like it's about his kid, doesn't it?
Yeah. Hold on, let me pull up those lyrics again.
Maybe I'm just like attached to the idea of First Bird, but it kind of reminds me of what Sturgill did on Sailor's Guide to Earth with the first song on that record.
Right. I'm sorry. Wait. We'll get back to discussion, but I just searched for the lyrics, and you know how on Google it shows you like people also search for, and it shows you like whatever the it shows you like whatever the YouTube thumbnail is. Natural information popped up like right underneath it, but the thumbnail image that they use is the uwu Chinese finger trap photo.
God damn it!
I'm sending a screenshot of hit the chat. This isn't for the listener. This is all for us.
Podcasting is a visual medium, as we know.
Right, yeah. But I do highly recommend that anybody listening to this check out like all of the press photos that Bill Callahan has released since announcing this record. But anyway, what were we we were talking about how First Bird. Yeah. I don't know. You were kind of talking. Did you have anything more to add to that, or was I talking about it?
Sorry, got a bit of a coughing fit, folks. Still kind of recovering.
I haven't recovered since the first time I saw the Bill Callahan finger trap ooh photo, but yeah, thanks for playing the song, Matty.
It is quite literally my job to play songs, so
that's true.
Just call them out. Call them out.
I'm trying to think of like a really funny, built like a joke song, but I don't think he has joke songs. Like I'm thinking, like Bonnie Prince Billy.
I Am Star Wars, maybe.
Maybe,
but that's
maybe.
Yeah.
That's a stretch though, because like Bonnie Prince Billy genuinely has songs that are funny as shit. Like, I don't know if you've listened to Blueberry Jam or watched the music video, but it's just a song about how he likes blueberries, but it was inspired by how he took like psychedelic blueberries at a volcano in Hawaii as he was like sheltering in place during like a hurricane or something. I don't think Bill has songs like that, but he's getting there because he gets pretty goofy on this record, and
he does talk about microdosing.
He does talk about microdosing. Yeah,
that's very important.
You do what you gotta do. Yeah, but yeah, it some of the lyrics do kind of remind me of Bonnie Prince Billy lyrics almost, because like, you know, Will Oldham, he's like a mostly serious guy, but like sometimes he gets goofy and like it sounds like he's writing like 15th century English poetry, but it's really a song about getting head, you know. I feel like Bill leans into a little bit of that.
And her feet don't ever touch the ground.
Yeah, like, he is capable of writing funny songs. There are a lot of them on Gold Record, but I feel like here he's mostly playing it straight.
Yeah, for sure.
Though it is fun to think about the song Drain Face as about him being a fan of Lady.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only way this record could be better, if you ask me.
Yeah. Drain Face is another good one. And I think what seals the deal on it is he does that growling noise.
Oh,
like, you know when he growls? Zach, you're not involved in Music League anymore. And honestly, I'm not either. I decided I'm done with it. But in the Indie Heads podcast Discord Music League, we had a round that was like, you meet Bigfoot in the woods, what song do you play for him? And I submitted My Friend by Bill Callahan because I was like, I would like Bigfoot to be my friend, but also if you really think really hard, like that growling sound that he does during the chorus, like Bigfoot could be saying my friend.
That's
and by extension
that's
Bigfoot could also
communication.
Be saying,
Bigfoot would understand that.
Right, yeah. He would tell me he wants to be my friend. And by extension Bigfoot would also say, you're Drain Face. You know?
Exactly.
I think we've gotten to the point where it's just inside jokes about Bill. We're not even talking about the record anymore.
I'm trying to get back to my train of thought because I had one. I promise I did. It's just kind of escaped with all the jokes.
Yeah.
Come sing for me, or you may be the last bird. As we're coming out.
Okay, let me see. I think what I was going to say is that, like, looking at Shepherd in his sheepskin vest, that was the reintroduction. That was Since this time, I have become a father, I have lost my mother, I have gotten married, I've had period sex, all the important
Right,
all the
yeah.
important life milestones.
That got a laugh out of Matty.
Oh, brother. Say it took him that long to get period sex. Come on, brother. Come on.
Because
And again, come on, brother.
Shepard was like, it arrived at the right time for me because it arrived in the year where a lot of different things happened for me, a lot of different life experiences I hadn't had at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And now, a couple years later, here we are. And this feels like more like an entrenchment, I guess. I'm putting this thought together as I go along, but
I've been doing that this whole time.
yes,
Don't worry.
especially with songs like Coyotes, it feels like, okay, this is what I have, this is what it means to me, this is how I'm trying to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you gotta keep the coyotes away from the doors somehow. And
Right.
I feel like, I don't want to say it's like a theme of the record because I'm not especially great at analyzing Bill's music. Like, I respect the hell out of him as a writer, but it's kind of a tough nut for me to crack sometimes.
Well, yeah, and then also you don't want to I know for a fact I might have looked at Bill's lyrics and imparted my own experiences onto them, but I'm not going to sit here and try to, I don't know, predict exactly what he wrote this thing about, that's not my thing to speak on. That's Bill's thing. But yeah, and also there's just a song could be about one thing, but it could be about a multitude of things. And when you're dealing with all of these responsibilities and things that you love just starting to pile on top of each other, they all sort of start to blend into one. So one song could be about all those things or one of those specific things.
Or none of those things.
Yeah, and that's just the beauty of music. I will say that before we continue, I was saying that I like to accidentally impart my own experiences onto his music. I will say that the Mackenzies from Gold Record, I decided that that's a Transmask song, and I'm not going to elaborate further. But back to what we were talking about. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from with, the sort of evolution, lyrically since then, where Shepard, he's sort of adjusting to all of these life changes, and now he's settling with them, and now having to protect them with his life almost. And yeah, and I think it's funny because I'm pretty sure Shepard is probably the first Bill record that I knew of. That's the first time his name appeared on my radar. Unfortunately, I think it's because I still watched The Needle Drop at the time, and he might have mentioned it in the video. But but that was definitely the first time Bill appeared on my radar. And then I don't think I properly got into him until Gold Record came out. And I think Gold Record came out at a good time as well. If there's a lot of inward reflection on that record, and God knows it came out during a time that we were doing a lot of inward reflecting, and then to follow it up with this one, the sort of we're not really in quarantine anymore. We're not doing that deep quarantine, thinking, but there's still a lot going on, and there's still a lot on his mind, and it almost comes out a little bit more I don't know. I think this record is a lot whereas Gold Record was sort of held in and restrained a little bit, this one lets a lot more go.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And Let me think. Like, I feel like not just Coyotes. Lord knows I've been harping enough on Coyotes, but like Bo. Well, yes, there it is. But
Thank
songs
you, Matty.
like Boll Weevil and Partition strike me as ones that are like, okay, it doesn't matter how, just get through it. This feels like a record that is just like determined to get through no matter what it takes. And
Right.
I like that. I like that dimension to his songwriting. Like, even if it's in less oblique ways, like, last one at the party, like, the lyric I keep thinking about is, if you were house fire, I'd go in to save the cat, which is a funny line, but it's also like, it feels like a lyric about devotion too. Like,
Yeah.
I would risk,
for sure.
I would risk it for you because, like, you're important to me. And I feel like that's something that captures the tenor of this record, at least to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you keep talking about Coyotes. We haven't even talked about what I think is like the big centerpiece on this record, and that's, we talked about it during grocery store episode, because I said that it sounded like Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill, but Natural Information, we haven't discussed that yet, because we're talking about all these other songs and they sound so much like this thing that he did, and this is sort of the culmination leading from this to this, or this is him changing from this to that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Bill has done a song that sounds like Natural Information. At least I can't think of one.
Yeah, like, nothing that immediately comes to mind, and I think, like, it's something I'm still trying to figure out myself, because, like, even after so many listens, this is still the one song that doesn't quite sound like it fits to me. Like, it sounds like a car commercial song. It's a good car commercial song, but it does feel like a break from the rest of the album around it.
Yeah, it almost makes me want, because it's not even like it's the lead single. It was the second single that he put out. So it's not like he was coming up with something catchy to do for a single necessarily, because if that was the case, he would have made it the first one to come out rather than Coyotes, unless, everything that you've said about Coyotes is true, and he thought that was sort of like the summation of the record, and that's why he made that the first single, and he was like, oh shit, we need something that's gonna be like appealing to the masses or something. I don't know. I mean, lyrically, it still sort of resonates with the record. He's talking about the baby again and the dreaming, and it goes back to First Bird. But in general, it is a little bit of I'm not saying I dislike it. It's one of my favorites on the record. I think it definitely grew on me since it first released. But it is definitely different.
Yes, it's an outlier. That doesn't necessarily make it bad, but the rest of the album feels of a piece to me, somehow. Like, not to say that's just like one big song, but something like this that's like one of the most upbeat songs he's ever recorded, certainly. It feels... It sticks out like a sore thumb, no matter how good the song is.
Yeah, and it became even more obvious once the whole record came out. But yeah, I wouldn't say car commercial. I would say AstraZeneca commercial. Like, there are a bunch of like mid-50s, mid-60s, like older white people like dancing in front of a green screen with like a big smiley face on it, or whatever the pharmaceutical company's logo is.
Yeah, like some of this guitar stuff sounds like the music that would play while the side effects scrolled past.
Right, exactly. Old man is riding a bike, recovering from his hip pain or something.
Yeah, I think this song would be perfect for laser spine specialist. I think would be a great commercial, great jingle for that commercial. Especially when especially when you deal with the spine problem of you record a song with Robbie Starr at Superstar Track Records, and it's not a fucking hit, and it's supposed to be played on the radio, and it wasn't played on the radio. You paid $10,000, and then he just tells you, "Oh, you're too tight. It's the song is not in your cue zone." It's just,
and we got to get it.
This song makes me think of that. Jeff Chris down from Indiana makes it professionally.
It sounds
like a great song. I'm not the biggest Bill head, but this is a great song in my opinion. I love this.
It sounds like you have something on your heart, Matty.
It's on my heart, and it's that natural information, baby.
Yeah.
And but no, this is a great song. I can say that much. That this is a really great song. That I definitely get why you're saying it's a car commercially song, because it's definitely like a kind of, it definitely has that feeling, but it still feels like, it doesn't feel like that out of place in the very brief listenings I've had to Bill's work, past work in this record. Like it's fun and jaunty, and it's just he still does kind of like deadpan dry Bill vocals. It creates like a really weird kind of like what's the word I'm thinking of?
Dissonance.
Yes, thank you. It's kind of like interesting dissonance that I think really works for this track, and I'd be curious to see if Bill does more stuff like this in the future, because that would be pretty good.
That would be very interesting if he did a whole album of stuff that sounded like it, because that would be his most different record ever. And we're talking like when he was doing Smog, he made shit that sounded like fucking Daniel Johnson, Now I'm thinking, how do you Bill Pill Matty? How do we do that?
Well, here's the thing. I have listened to a couple of Bill records. Of course, I did listen to Apocalypse for my music writer's exercise earlier this year, and I really liked it. Obviously, Writing for the Feeling is just like, of course, I think like my initial Bill Pill was probably when Writing for the Feeling was like placed at like number 11 on Pitchfork's Songs of the Decade list, and I was like, this is a very strange choice, but this high.
They're right.
And they're right. Like, it's a great song. And I did listen to this new record, and I still feel like there is, I was thinking about it in the car. This is more of like a general kind of music opinion, like kind of me evaluating like my own sense of taste, and like what records do I consider bad versus what records where I'm like, yeah, this is just not for me. This Bill record is like one where like there's some stuff I really like, and honestly, you guys talking about it and like listening to some of the tracks as I've been called upon to play them have made me go, okay, I need to like revisit this record, because I feel like Bill seems to be like very much a slow burn kind of artist, where you just kind of have to let the work sit with you for a bit and kind of let it unlock itself slowly. Where there's stuff I can very like, okay, this is like not totally for me, but I can respect it and I can completely understand why people like it, versus something where I'm like, no, this is like just bad. Like, this is bad. Even stuff that's like critically respected, I can still be like, no, this is bad. Like, I'm thinking like, obviously for my hater records, I'm thinking records like Currents and Ants from Up There, where I do actually completely understand, hey, I get why people like this record, get the like these records. They're wrong, but I get why they like them. But the fact that it's this case where for this, again, I have, it's hard to have like actively hating feelings towards this record, and I obviously don't. I think this is a pretty good record that I do actually really want to revisit. But comparing that to some other, critically acclaimed artists and records, where I'm like, nope, this is just bad. Like, everything that people are saying is good about this record, like that's not the appeal to me at all for this stuff. But yeah, I don't know what I was trying to make. I think I was just trying to say this record very much made me think about the conversation between what's bad versus what isn't for you. And I'm curious about exploring that more down the line in my own writing and podcasting in the future. Of course, on this podcast, in which we had to create an entire new series to start talking about new music again, instead of doing it every 3 months, and on a podcast where we mostly listen to music made by weirdos and forgotten figures.
Hey, I never forgot about the Big Bopper. I never forgot about that.
Okay, this is, again, everyone talks about 9/11, never forget. All right, never forget the day that the music died, okay? It's more important, I think.
Can we do a field
that's
trip
the
to
plane
the
crash
site?
that I care about.
Can we do a field
What's
trip?
up?
I want to do a field trip to Clear Lake, Iowa. Can we do that?
Is that what is it? Is that a song on the record or?
That's where the plane crashed.
That's where the plane crashed.
Oh God! Oh yeah!
You
shit.
forgot.
Okay, I don't.
You
well, I'm
forgot
not up
the
on my
Big
Look,
Bopper. How could you?
well, I'm not up on my Big Bopper lore. Okay, I didn't start that bit. Okay, that was Gavin. All right.
That's right.
I just let y'all cook and have fun with it.
That's
Every
fair.
now and then
That's fair.
Every now and then. And here's what I'm gonna say. Like, if Gavin's listening, he's gonna be like, "It's not a fucking bit. It's not a bit. It is a bit, Gavin. All right. You can stop playing. Okay.
The density of Gavin's bits frightens me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true. I mean, look, as someone that that really could be put to blame for that, as the person that is most actively encouraged Gavin, or at least encouraged him very early on, leading to our current format of the podcast. It's a lot. There's just certain days where I just kind of have to ignore what they're talking about, and just be like, yeah, whatever. Also, I want to say, I'm going to expose Gavin. I want to say Gavin actually has a lot of Bill Callahan scrobbles, if I remember correctly.
He has a Bill Callahan poster in his apartment. Last time I saw a photo from the inside of his apartment. I've never met Gavin. I
have met Gavin.
You have met Gavin. But
I have met Gavin. We got beer. We went to a barcade together.
Yeah,
we played the golf machine.
And you were in his apartment and you saw the Bill Callahan poster. I've just seen like interior shots of his apartment. So that's the only reason
if I did, I don't remember it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was there.
Yeah.
But the apartment that he's now moved out of, so.
Right.
But hopefully it's up in his new place.
Right.
But let's get back to the record. Is there any songs y'all want to that we haven't got a chance to dive into yet that y'all want me to play and explore?
I actually, before we do that, I do want to get back to the point that you started out with about
yes,
Bill being like a slow burner artist. I totally feel that. I've been trying to get Max to take the pill for so long, but Max is a little more no offense, Max is a little bit more stubborn. Or maybe he's not well, no, he's a little bit stubborn, but he's
Have you seen the way the man eats pancakes? Are you surprised?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You can't change that man. But he described Bill endearingly as adult lullaby music, and I totally get that. As somebody who's 85% of his music intake is adult lullaby music, like, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And I think when I first got into Bill, I would consider Knock Knock by Smog at least like a top 3 record of all time for me. Like, it is up there. But I remember the first time I listened to Knock Knock, I just did not get it at first. I was like, I don't even know what the first Bill record I actually listened to proper was. It might have been Apocalypse. No, because I didn't get Apocalypse at first either.
I was gonna say, did you say that Shepherd and Shepherd was the first one you listened to?
That was the first one that I knew about it.
Oh, okay,
because I heard Anthony
gotcha.
Fantano talk about it.
Shepherd was mine because I knew a few of his songs, but because Drag City didn't let their artists on streaming services until quite recently, I never really took the plunge. So when they lifted the embargo in 2019, and that was the same year Shepherd came out, so I decided that was the time for me to take the plunge. And I understand the idea of Bill as a slow burn artist because his music is slow, his voice is low. That drives the idea that this is music that will take time, but
yeah.
it was kind of love at first sight for me because listen, when you write a song like Small Plane, you're him. I don't care. You're him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I genuinely don't remember the first. I think the first record of his that I listened to and I was like, oh yeah, I love this, was probably Eagle. And that's still my favorite of the records that he's released under his own name. But I think that was the first one that did it for me. And then I had to just go back and it's like you're unlocking all these doors. It's like, oh my God, wait, I finally get this. Now maybe I try this one again. But I will say for Matty though, if you haven't tried a Smog album, I feel
Yeah,
like you should try a Smog album. It's a little bit more slowcore. I would call it a little bit more slowcore at times.
I will say, yeah, I've definitely been becoming more slowcore pilled lately. So I feel like if there's any time, it's now.
Mhm.
I guess another question I'm curious about with it seems like there's a number. It's the fact that there's a number of these like kind of like folk artists that popped up in like the 90s and then into the 2000s. They all started changing their names. Like Microphones became Mount Erie. Will Oldham was Palace Music into Bonnie Prince Billy. Bill
Um,
Callahan Smog to Bill Callahan, and
can can I issue?
now Okerville River is now just
It's just Will
he
Sheff
changes.
now.
He's
Yeah.
Will Sheff now.
Can I issue a correction?
Yes.
He was Palace. He was Palace Songs. He was Palace Music. He was Palace Brothers. He was just Will Oldham. He was Bonnie Billy, but without the Prince. He was this was like a collaborative record that he did with Alistair Roberts and Jason Molina, but he was amalgamated Sons of Rest. He I think that's all the Bonnie Prince Billy names. I think that's all the
This
names.
motherfucker has more nicknames than Shaq.
And they all have the word
But yeah.
palace. But yeah, that is an
I'm
interesting
I'm
observation.
Yeah, and I'd be curious, like similar to like with obviously 2 years ago when Phil Elverum returned to the Microphones name to release Microphones in 2020, I would be curious if Bill ever goes back to do another Smog record at some point, or just kind of says, yeah, I'm going back to Smog. But I feel like it's like, nah, I feel like with like Phil Elverum, like that project was just such a it was really very much like a differing kind of thing where it's like my headspace is different, so the name is changing. Whereas Bill is just like, I just want to be known by my own name. Like he seems like a much more. He's definitely a guy who very carefully thinks about his music and is but especially as of lately, he definitely is not as cryptic as Phil can be every now and then. Where Bill's just like at this point in time, he's just a goofy guy. He's a dad. He's just living in Texas. He's doing the Chinese finger trap ooh face. He's just having a good time.
I will say to that point, and now I'm thinking about it more because the same thought crossed my head. I was in the car on my way back home a couple of minutes before we started recording, and I was like, what if Bill ever did like a Smog tour where he just did Smog songs and brought that back, like the way that Phil Elverum brought back the Microphones project and then did that little tour, which I was supposed to see, but I got like 8 vials of blood drawn that day and I was really sleepy, so I just went home instead of going to the concert. But I will say though, now I'm thinking about it more that you brought that up. This is another thought that I had while I was in the car on my way home. Like, Smog and Bill Callahan are two like such different projects. Like, yes, he changed his stage name to just his name because he just wanted to be him, but I think on top of that, that's when you started to get, not that Smog lyrics are bad, he was always been a phenomenal lyricist, but he did used to be a lot more cryptic than he is now, and I think that shift over to just using the name Bill Callahan was him creating that dividing line. Like, this is who, and
so it is pretty similar to Mount Erie, where it's like
very similar.
So
like,
there is a chance where he could decide to revisit that name for a record if he kind of feels he's in the space for it, but it does not seem as likely.
Yeah, I don't think he would ever do it because like you said,
there were circumstances that led to Phil wanting to go back to the Microphones project.
Right. Well, that was really just a one-off so that he could do that Microphones in 2020 record and just sort of give us this whole 40 something minute long summation of like how he got to the point where he was at now, and it made sense to bring back the Microphones moniker. But I don't think Bill is gonna go back to Smog anytime soon or even release a Smog record. But like,
Gotcha.
there is a very clear divide between the two, and I will say that I think, like I said, not that his lyrics were bad when he was in Smog, but I've listened to and read so many interviews from the guy, and Smog is very much his, like, I just moved out of my parents' house and now I'm in Chicago and I'm this weird, lonely, angsty 20 something, and I'm making this. It started out as more like lo-fi music, but then it sort of slowly evolved into the more like slowcore alt country style that defined most of Smog's like most iconic records. But I would say that his best lyrics as Smog are on A River Ain't Too Much to Love, which is also Gavin's favorite album of his. He's confirmed this in the chat. But the lyrics on that one are the best, but it's also the last record that he did as Smog. So I consider that sort of like the turning point where he was like, I'm an adult now. Like, none of this angsty shit, none of this like weird melodrama. Like, I'm actually going to write what I'm feeling, And that's sort of how everything that he's done with the Bill Callahan name has culminated into what it is now. I think Will Oldham just changed all of his names because he felt like it. I don't. There's no rhyme or reason. Although some of his stuff when he was under like all the Palace monikers, like basically sounded like Slint. Like, because granted, he was friends with all the guys from Slint, but he was sort of like Diet Slint back then. But then he just kind of decided, like, I guess I'm Bonnie Prince Billy now.
Hmm. But yeah, any final thoughts on YTI, or do we just want to
That's
wrap
right.
this one
We
up?
were talking about this album, weren't we? I say that with love. I
try to bring it back to it, but also it's hard to talk about just this one record without talking about just everything, Bill.
Oh,
also,
yes.
he's low-key like one of my hyperfixations. So like, of course I'm gonna ramble about him. I only brought up the every time I hit Sativa I get creative tweet once. I only brought it up
which
once.
it's one of the greatest tweets
of all time.
It's one of the greatest tweets. I'm very sad that Bill deleted his account, but very happy it does live on in screenshot form.
The screenshot lives
as
forever.
as a wonderful little in joke for us on the podcast and our dear friends.
I think like the thing that I wanted to bring up was that, especially on this last re-listen, Planets is the one that really like that was the skeleton key for me on this listen, because it feels like a song about acceptance, about like understanding the fact that in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of reality, if you will, maybe none of it really matters. But that doesn't mean it doesn't matter, if that makes sense. It's about like getting to a rebirth and finding your way through a revelation like that. Like the lyric that is explicitly about this, it's like, and I felt so good, just like Sudsy Chrome, renewed, for a second season. And it's like, okay, sure, maybe in the whole cosmic scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything, but that doesn't mean there's no point. That doesn't mean that you can't still learn and grow every single day and understand what's important and what's not. And I feel like, especially on this most recent listen that I did before we recorded this episode, I feel like maybe that's the thesis statement of this record. Like I said, I was harping on Coyotes a lot, but maybe it's this one.
Yeah, I will say this is also I feel like the back half of the record, but this is just a thing with me anyways, because ADHD, like sometimes like the last couple tracks on a record, unless they're like really like solid. And the one thing I will say about this album that it is sorely missing is a 9-minute long outro track. It is sorely missing that. But usually when I listen to an album, like the last couple tracks, I start to trail off a little bit. But this time I was listening to it, I made sure I really digested everything. And I will say that, Planets is the one that stood out to me on this re-listen that I just did too. So maybe we were in sync. I don't know. But yeah, it's just a beautiful little track. And I mean, I feel like you could really pick any song from this record and call it the thesis, except for maybe Natural Information. But that's just such a different track from everything else. But yeah, it's an album.
A really, really good one.
It's a really, really good album. Album of the year, for me at least. But we expected that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. As I said at the beginning, this is probably the last FYC episode for probably the next month and a half, 2 months. We'll kind of see what's coming out in January, or see if there's any late 2022 records we missed and want to talk about next year. Imagine there's not going to be too much. But as I mentioned, while FYC will be taking a little,
like Matty, as the captain of the Wise Blood fan squad, I cannot believe you aren't talking about it.
Okay, there's a very good chance we end up doing an FYC on Wise Blood. Again, I cannot confirm or deny that, but because the record's not out yet, but I did listen to it today. It is very good. I know Jackie also listened to it and has a lot of thoughts. Again, so this is most likely going to be the last FYC for the rest of the year. I say most likely. There's a chance we end up doing one on Wise Blood. But more likely than that, we'll probably talk about that during we're gonna do a Q4 favorites episode at the beginning of the year, and that's most likely where we'll touch on Wise Blood, unless we decide we want to do an FYC on it in the new year. But we'll see where our schedules are at. But yeah, I'm trying to think of any other updates I want to give on the pod. Anything I think pretty much is everything I've said is everything I've said in the last episode. So nothing crazy. Mainline episodes for the rest of the year into 2022, and then we'll be launching a new series at the end of January. They'll be taking up a lot of the podcast space for the time for the time being throughout the early part of 2023. But yeah, that is it. Anything y'all want to Zach and Ian? Anything you guys want to say before we bounce?
Thank you for listening. I am going to go have approximately 15 lozenges now. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you, Zach, for sacrificing for the pod.
Am I allowed to plug my stuff? Because the last episode I was on, Rose had to leave, so I didn't get to plug my stuff. But
go for it.
I'm not gonna plug my Twitter. Everybody who listens to this shit already follows me on there, and it's gonna die anyway, so I'm not gonna plug my Twitter. But I do art stuff, so if you would like to follow that, because it's kind of my career, you can follow me on Instagram at ianeking.art, and that is also the URL to my website. I pay $8 a year for the .art domain name. Really good investment. Highly recommend it if you're a person in the fine arts. But yeah, give me a follow. Check out my work. It's my livelihood. I say as if I don't also have a job on top of that. But you know, big stuff coming. Big things coming.
Yeah. Alrighty then. We will see you all very, very soon then, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. And if you're hearing this via our main feed, hey, you should subscribe to the Patreon, because you could have heard this a week early if you skipped the beginning part. So there's your extra little jump, especially as Twitter is about to fall apart, maybe. So if you like us, you like the community, and you want a place to shit post online, hey, our Discord server is a great place for that. And it's only $1 a month. So what are you doing? All right, that's it. Bye-bye, everybody.
The last one at the party. He always said he had to go. Last one at the party. We thought he'd never